On a quiet morning in Springfield, Missouri, no one in the Staudte family could have guessed that their lives were about to change forever. Diane, a dedicated nurse, was the caring mother of the family. Her husband, Mark, was a music enthusiast with hopes of making a career out of it. They had 4 children: Sean, an autistic son; Sarah, an aspiring French interpreter; Rachel, a talented artist; and Brianna, the youngest, just 11. The Staudte family from the outside appeared to be a picture of happiness and togetherness. But behind the walls of their home were years of financial stress, family pressure, and simmering discontent. Diane shouldered all the financial responsibilities, while Mark struggled to find a musical career without any significant success. Nevertheless, both of them still tried to provide a comfortable home for their children. However, everything began to change on a fateful day in 2012, when Mark suddenly died at home. Diane, as a nurse, tried to revive her husband but was unsuccessful. Mark's death was attributed to a heart attack, a logical conclusion given his medical history. But no one, including Diane, expected that this was just the beginning of a series of horrific tragedies that the family would face. Within 18 months of Mark's death, 2 other family members died under strange circumstances. Each death was thought to be natural or due to illness, but a secret investigation later revealed a terrifying truth. None of these tragedies were accidental. The Staudte family story is not only a tragic series of events, but also a chilling example of how greed and resentment can destroy a family. This is the story of Diane Staudte, a devoted mother who cruelly turned her own family into a target for crime. The Staudtes live in Springfield, Missouri, in a small but cozy 3-bedroom house. Springfield is not only where Diane grew up, but also where she hopes to build a stable life with her husband and children. Diane, a strong and resilient woman, comes from a conservative family where religion plays an important role. She is quiet, but deep down, Diane has a clear plan for the future: to become a nurse and help others. Mark, on the other hand, is a man who loves music to the core. Born to a military father, Mark moved frequently as a child. This made it difficult for him to make friends, and he always felt out of place. However, it was music that became his companion and helped him overcome difficult years. Mark taught himself guitar and started singing. Despite his passion for music, his career never achieved great success. 2 quiet, introverted people met at a music festival in 1985. They quickly realized they had something in common: a love of music and a desire to start a family. Within a year of knowing each other, Diane and Mark decided to get married. They moved to Branson, Missouri, to start a new life. A year later, their first son, Sean, was born. The oldest son, who is autistic, Sean is a good son but cannot be independent. Although he participates in community workshops, Sean does not have a stable job and needs care from his family. Sean's dependence puts an additional burden on Diane, who has to work hard to support the family. The oldest daughter, Sarah, is a bright girl with a dream of becoming a French interpreter. She has a degree in linguistics but has difficulty finding a job in Springfield. Sarah is unemployed and depends on her mother. Despite her efforts, Sarah always feels stuck when she cannot help her family financially. Rachel is a talented girl and Diane's greatest pride. She is a good student, gets high grades, and has a special talent for painting. Diane often shares Rachel's works on social media as a way to show her pride in her daughter. However, Rachel is the one who has a particularly close relationship with her mother and will play an important role in the following events. As the youngest child in the family, Brianna is only 11 years old and is always the center of attention of the whole family. Although she does not fully understand the difficulties the family is facing, Brianna brings joy and innocence to everyone. Diane, as a nurse at the local hospital, is the only economic pillar in the family. Mark, although always pursuing his passion for music, has never found a stable job. The small income from performing at bars or events is not enough to help Diane. The financial burden fell heavily on the mother's shoulders. With an irresponsible husband and 4 children to care for, Diane felt trapped in a vicious cycle. The pressure from her family, combined with her frustration with Mark, gradually made Diane dissatisfied with life. Everything began to fall apart when the family faced a series of tragedies in less than 18 months. Diane, once admired as a devoted mother, would soon be revealed as the main character in a cold and cruel plan. In April 2012, Mark Staudte began to show signs of unusual health problems. During a musical performance with the band members noticed that Mark looked tired, lacked energy, and spoke unclearly. Some thought he might have the flu, but no one expected that this would be the beginning of a series of tragedies in the Staudte family. Diane, with her experience as a nurse, also noticed strange symptoms in her husband. He was not eating much, his skin was pale and yellow, and he complained of nausea. However, Mark refused to see a doctor. To Diane, this was not unusual. Mark had always been carefree and unconcerned about his health, but this time, the unusual led to tragedy. On Easter Sunday 2012, Diane and the children went to church as usual, but Mark said he was not feeling well and decided to stay home and rest. After the service, Diane went home and went to her room to check on Mark. When she opened the door, she found Mark lying motionless on the bed, unresponsive. Panicked, Diane called an ambulance. When the medical team arrived, they concluded that Mark had died several hours earlier. Diane told the medical staff that her husband had a history of diabetes and high blood pressure, and the initial conclusion was that Mark had died from a stroke or heart attack. Since there were no signs of anything unusual, no autopsy was performed, and Mark's death certificate listed the cause of death as heart attack. Mark's sudden death left the entire family in a state of shock. Sean, the eldest son, often posted emotional posts about his father on social media, expressing his grief and loss. Brianna, the youngest daughter, also cried uncontrollably because she missed her father. For Diane, losing her partner of more than 25 years was a huge shock, at least in the way she showed it to others. However, some relatives and friends of the family noticed that Diane did not seem as sad as they expected. Just a few weeks after the funeral, Diane began planning a move. Using the $20,000 life insurance she received after Mark's death, Diane bought a larger house in a better area. She explained that moving out of the old house was necessary to ease her grief and start a new life. Although Diane appeared to be sad, her actions gradually made some people around her suspicious. Some colleagues and neighbors noticed that she quickly returned to a normal state after her husband's death. Diane even attended church outings and was often seen smiling. No one in the family or community suspected that Mark's death was not a natural event. However, in Diane's mind, a cruel plan was slowly forming. Just 5 months after Mark's death, another tragedy struck, this time to Sean, their eldest son. In September 2012, just 5 months after Mark's death, the Staudte family faced another tragedy. Sean, Diane, and Mark's eldest son began to show the same symptoms as his father before his death. Sean felt nauseous, tired, and had no appetite. Diane, with her experience as a nurse, tried to care for her son with home remedies, but Sean's condition did not improve. Sean had been experiencing frequent mild seizures, but Diane believed these were symptoms of an underlying illness. This time, however, she noticed that Sean's seizures were getting worse. When asked by his mother if he wanted to see a doctor, Sean refused, thinking he just had a common cold. One Sunday in September, Diane and her other children went to church as usual. Before leaving, she left medicine and water by Sean's bedside, hoping that he would feel better when they returned. However, when the family returned, Diane found Sean lying motionless on the bedroom floor, surrounded by blood oozing from his mouth. Panicking, Diane called 911. When paramedics arrived, they confirmed that Sean had died. Diane told the staff that Sean had a history of seizures and that this seizure may have been fatal. Paramedics and police took Diane's statement and found no signs of foul play. Sean was sent for an autopsy, but the results were negative. The cause of death was determined to be a severe seizure. After Sean's death, Diane held a cremation ceremony and scattered her son's ashes next to the lake where she had scattered Mark's ashes. The loss left a deep hole in the family, especially for Brianna, her youngest daughter. But just like after Mark's death, Diane seemed to quickly return to her normal life. Diane's actions continued to raise suspicions from some relatives and friends. While her other children grieved, Diane appeared quite calm, regularly attending church activities and social gatherings. However, no one suspected that Sean's death was not due to natural causes. However, for Diane, this was just the next step in a series of cruel plans she had been hatching. After the death of her brother, Sarah, the second daughter, began to notice that something was wrong in the family. Sarah was not only worried about her health, but also worried about the future of her siblings. However, when she discussed this with her mother, Diane dismissed all suspicions, even blaming family genetics for the deaths of Mark and Sean. Sarah felt uneasy but had no evidence to prove anything. She could not have imagined that just a few months later, she would become the next target in her mother's plan. In the summer of 2013, Diane's second daughter, Sarah, began to experience the same unusual symptoms that Mark and Sean had before their deaths. Sarah felt tired, had a poor appetite, was nauseous, and had frequent headaches. At first, she thought she had the flu, but the symptoms became more severe. Diane, as a nurse, noticed these symptoms but did not take Sarah to the doctor immediately. She continued to care for her daughter with home remedies and regularly made Sarah drinks, hoping to help her recover faster. But instead of getting better, Sarah's health continued to deteriorate. One morning in June, when Sarah was unable to get out of bed and was in critical condition, Diane finally decided to take her daughter to the hospital. There, doctors found that Sarah was in very serious condition. Her kidneys were showing signs of acute failure, and other internal organs were beginning to show signs of damage. In particular, they discovered signs of a mild brain bleed, which caused Sarah to frequently fall into a state of unconsciousness. Doctors performed a series of tests but could not find a specific cause. Sarah's condition rapidly deteriorated, and doctors warned Diane that her daughter might not survive. While Sarah was fighting for her life, Diane's behavior surprised the doctors and nurses. Instead of being concerned about her daughter, Diane seemed to be quite indifferent. She talked cheerfully to the nurses and even talked about an upcoming trip to Florida that she had planned. The hospital staff noticed that Diane's attitude did not resemble that of a mother who was worried about her daughter. Some nurses even thought that Diane was deliberately avoiding the fact that Sarah's condition was very serious. They became suspicious and decided to report Diane's behavior to the police. Meanwhile, the police received an anonymous call from an acquaintance of the Staudte family. This person suspected that Mark and Sean's deaths were not natural and that Diane might be involved. They warned that Sarah might be in danger. The police immediately began an investigation. The doctors were also asked to perform more thorough tests to look for signs of poison in Sarah's body. A team of medical experts was called in to take a closer look at Sarah's symptoms, which all seemed more indicative of poisoning than a simple illness. Soon, initial tests revealed that Sarah had traces of ethylene glycol, a key ingredient in antifreeze, in her system. The discovery shocked the doctors. They immediately notified the police, and the case was officially turned from a medical investigation to a criminal investigation. Investigators quickly learned more about Mark and Sean's conditions before their deaths and examined their medical records. They found that the symptoms of all three, from Mark, Sean, to Sarah, were similar and consistent with ethylene glycol poisoning. Diane remained calm and did not panic as the police began to question her. However, the investigators realized that Sarah might not be the ultimate target. Diane still had two daughters, Rachel and Brianna, and it was not ruled out that they were also part of her plan. After receiving the test results that found traces of ethylene glycol in Sarah's body, the police began a full investigation. Their first step was to thoroughly review the medical and death records of Mark and Sean. Since both had been cremated, there was no way to conduct a second autopsy. However, tissue samples from Sean's autopsy were still stored, and this became important evidence. When Sean's tissue samples were tested, the results confirmed that he had also suffered from ethylene glycol poisoning, like Sarah. This made Sean's death, and Mark's, no longer considered natural. The investigation now turned into a serious criminal case. The medical staff at the hospital reported to the police about Diane's behavior during Sarah's stay in the hospital. A nurse said Diane did not seem worried about her daughter and was talking about a vacation to Florida. She even joked with staff about not letting anything get in the way of her plans. This testimony reinforced suspicions that Diane was not only involved in Sarah's condition, but may have meticulously planned the entire incident. Investigators decided to bring Diane in for questioning. When summoned by the police, Diane was initially cooperative. She answered all questions calmly, even casually. Diane said that Mark had died due to poor health care. Sean had a history of epilepsy, and Sarah was under great psychological stress that led to her current condition. However, investigators quickly realized that Diane was deliberately misleading. When asked about what she had been doing in the days before Sarah fell ill, Diane became flustered. One investigator recalled, "When we asked about the drinks Diane had made for Sarah, she clearly changed the subject." This immediately aroused suspicion. Armed with evidence from the hospital and Sean's tissue sample, the police obtained a search warrant for Diane's home. During the search, they found a bottle of antifreeze hidden in the garage, along with bottles of Coca-Cola standing nearby. Notably, the antifreeze was the type that did not contain a bittering agent, meaning it would not be detectable when mixed into drinks. In addition, the police discovered handwritten notes in Diane's room, describing how to use ethylene glycol to cause poisoning without leaving obvious traces. These notes match the symptoms experienced by Mark, Sean, and Sarah. During the search, a diary was also found in Rachel's room. The contents shocked the entire investigation team. Rachel had recorded her emotions and strange dreams in detail, including a prediction that her father and brother would disappear to make life easier for the family. Rachel's diary was immediately introduced into evidence. When summoned for questioning, Rachel initially denied any involvement, but after hours of questioning, she began to reveal the terrifying truth about her mother. Rachel admitted that she knew about her mother's plan to take care of the family members. Diane had told Rachel that Mark and Sean were burdens on the family and that getting rid of them would make life easier. Rachel also said that her mother had asked her to look up information about antifreeze on the internet because Diane wanted to make sure it couldn't be detected in the drinks. Rachel also revealed that Sarah wasn't the ultimate target. According to Diane's plan, after Sarah died, Brianna, her youngest daughter, would be next. Rachel's testimony complicated the investigation. Not only was Diane suspected of being the mastermind, but Rachel could now be considered an accomplice. The police had to decide whether Rachel was an active participant in her mother's plan or a victim of manipulation. Investigators also began to question how long Diane had been planning this. Why would a mother be so cruel as to destroy her own family? From Rachel's testimony and the evidence gathered, a horrifying picture began to emerge. Diane had not acted impulsively, but had planned meticulously for years. Everything from purchasing antifreeze, choosing the timing of her attack, to preparing a plausible excuse to cover up her actions were all carefully calculated by Diane. When faced with undeniable evidence, Diane finally admitted the true motive behind her heinous actions. She testified that Diane was tired of having to shoulder all the family's expenses. Mark, her husband, who did not have a stable job, and Sean, her eldest son, who could not support himself, had become economic burdens. Diane believed that getting rid of them would relieve her financial pressure. Diane felt trapped in an unhappy marriage. She claimed that Mark was not only irresponsible, but also mentally and physically abusive. Although there was no concrete evidence for these allegations, Diane used that to justify her actions. Diane not only wanted to get rid of the burden, but also wanted to have complete control over her family. She could not bear that her children, especially Sarah, would not live up to her expectations. Diane was confident that her plan would not be suspected. She chose ethylene glycol because she knew it was difficult to detect in conventional tests. Rachel revealed that she had been manipulated by her mother. Diane often confided to Rachel that the family would be better off if it were just the two of them. Rachel, who considered her mother the only person she could trust in the family, was convinced. However, investigators did not believe that Rachel was simply a victim. They believed that she had an active role in finding information and assisting her mother in carrying out the plan. Rachel testified that she did not directly participate in poisoning her father and brother, but admitted that she helped her mother conceal suspicions from other family members. Sarah, despite permanent brain damage, was able to provide a partial statement. She said that before she was admitted to the hospital, she drank a glass of water prepared by her mother. Although she could not remember the details, Sarah said that she had felt that her mother had been cold and distant recently. This coincided with Rachel's testimony that Diane had tried to make Sarah believe that the difficulties in her life were her own fault and that escape was necessary. From Rachel's testimony and notes found in Diane's home, investigators discovered that Diane had planned to target Brianna next. Diane felt that caring for a young daughter was a burden she did not want to continue to bear. Rachel also admitted that she had heard her mother say that after Brianna died, they would move to another place to start over. Investigators discovered that Diane had done everything to cover her tracks after each attack. After Mark's death, she used the insurance money to move house, creating the feeling that the family was starting over. After Sean's death, she pretended to mourn but was actually planning her next move. Documents seized from Diane's home included a receipt for antifreeze purchased from an online supplier, notes on how to mix and how much to use, a detailed list of living expenses in which Diane noted the financial benefit of removing a burden. The investigation gathered enough evidence to prosecute Diane and Rachel. Diane was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Rachel, as an accomplice, also faced similar charges but could have received leniency if she cooperated by testifying against her mother. Diane and Rachel's case attracted a great deal of public attention. Trials took place in late 2015 and early 2016, where the gruesome details of the family poisoning scheme were laid out for the public. Diane and Rachel faced charges including 2 counts of first-degree murder, Mark and Sean, 1 count of attempted murder, Sarah, murder plot, Brianna, evidence collected, receipt for antifreeze, notes on how to make it, including how to mix it with Coca-Cola. Rachel's diary, in which she wrote about predicting the deaths of family members, tissue tests of Sean, which showed traces of ethylene glycol, the main compound in antifreeze. Medical staff testimony about Diane's cold behavior while Sarah was in critical condition. Rachel's testimony. Rachel, who pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate in exchange for a lighter sentence, provided details of her mother's plan. I was convinced by my mother that this was the best way to solve our family problems, but I now realize I was horribly wrong, she told the court. Rachel described how Diane showed no remorse for carrying out the plan. She also revealed that Diane had taught her to hide any evidence and to be prepared to lie if she was suspected. Diane continued to deny the charges despite her earlier confession during questioning. She claimed that her initial confession was coerced. Diane's defense attorney attempted to argue that Rachel had been the one who planned the plan, and Diane had simply gone along with it. However, the evidence, especially the antifreeze receipt and Diane's notes, disproved this argument. Throughout the trial, Diane remained calm, not even showing emotion as the gruesome evidence was presented. This further alienated the jury. Sarah, despite suffering permanent brain damage, attended the trial and spoke of what she remembered before she was poisoned. "I always thought my mother loved us, but now I realize I've been living a lie. She tried to kill me and take everything from me." Brianna, who had been placed in foster care, was also present in court. Despite her young age, she expressed fear and heartache when she learned that she had been a target in her mother's plan. "I don't understand why you would want to kill all of us. I just want our family to be happy." In the end, the jury took less than 2 days to reach a verdict. Diane was sentenced to life without parole for murder and attempted murder. Rachel, who cooperated with the authorities, received a 42-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 20 years. The judge sentenced Diane, saying, "Your actions not only took the lives of those who loved you, but also destroyed your family. Your cruelty is unforgivable." Sarah. After being discharged from the hospital, Sarah was transferred to a special care center. Although she was no longer able to live independently, she was supported to live as comfortably as possible. Brianna. She was adopted by a kind family and is now living a peaceful life, trying to forget her past. Rachel. From prison, Rachel expresses deep remorse. She writes to Sarah and Brianna, apologizing for not standing up for them when she had the chance. The Diane Staudte case is not only a story of crime, but also a warning about the destructive power of selfishness and indifference. It is also a testament to the fact that justice can be served, even in the face of sophisticated conspiracies and horrific crimes. The lives of Sarah and Brianna continue to be a symbol of resilience, proving that even after experiencing the most terrible tragedies, people can still find hope to move forward. Thank you for watching. Like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to stay updated. Your support means the world to us.